The sea is older than memory and wider than imagination, a moving mirror in which every generation has seen not only survival but story. And within its endless expanse lie myths forgotten by time, fragments of tales once sung by sailors, whose voices are now swallowed by the tide. To begin with these myths is to descend into a library without walls, each wave a page, each tide a chapter, each whisper of foam a story carried forward through centuries. They are not the grand legends of gods like Poseidon or Neptune that carved their names into marble and song, but the quieter, stranger myths told on decks under starlight, around fires on distant shores, or in whispers shared in markets where sailors traded not only goods but memories. These forgotten myths are seeds of imagination, planted by fear and wonder, watered by salt and silence, grown into tales as resilient as the ocean itself. The first forgotten myth tells of the sea's mirror, a place said to exist far beyond any coast, where the water lies so perfectly still that it reflects the sky with such clarity that sailors could not tell if they were sailing above or below, if the stars were in the heavens or beneath their hulls. They believed that if one gazed too long into this mirror, one's soul would slip out, drawn into the reflection, leaving behind only an empty body that would wander the deck aimlessly until claimed by the sea. This myth was whispered not to frighten children, but to remind sailors that staring too deeply into the unknown can dissolve the self, that wonder without humility risks madness. Another forgotten myth speaks of the Whale of Echoes, a beast said to carry the voices of every drowned sailor within its belly. Whenever it surfaced, sailors claimed they could hear faint cries rising from its blowhole, the lost voices of those who never returned home. To encounter the Whale of Echoes was both terror and blessing, for some believed the voices begged for vengeance, while others claimed they offered guidance, warning ships away from reefs and storms. The myth reveals not only fear of drowning but reverence for memory, for in these echoes sailors imagined that the sea did not silence but remembered, that no soul was lost but carried forever in the tide. Then there is the tale of the lanternfish king, a myth born in depths no sunlight touches. Sailors believed that in the abyss lived a king crowned with light, a fish whose head glowed brighter than a torch, and who ruled over creatures of the deep. When storms raged above, they said the lanternfish king sent pulses of light upward, guiding ships through chaos. Some captains poured wine into the water as offering to this luminous monarch, praying his glow would keep their hulls safe. Though science now names bioluminescence, the myth spoke of something deeper, the belief that even in darkness there is guidance, even in depths there is order, even in the unseen there is sovereignty. A fourth myth whispers of the eternal wave, a single swell that travels the world endlessly, never breaking, never resting, circling the globe unseen beneath tides and storms. Sailors claimed that if a ship caught this wave, it would be carried faster than wind, faster than current, across oceans in days, but only if the crew sang together without pause. Should they falter, the wave would consume them, dragging them into its eternal cycle. This myth taught discipline and unity, for sailors knew survival required not only skill but harmony, and in their endless labor they imagined that their songs were keys to the wave itself. From distant islands came the myth of the Coral Bride, a spirit said to rise from reefs in the shape of a woman crowned with shells and pearls. She would appear to lonely sailors, calling them into the water with beauty and song. Those who followed were never seen again, their bodies transformed into coral to expand her crown. The tale warned against temptation and desire, reminding sailors that beauty of the sea is both gift and danger, that love without caution can become prison. Beneath its caution lay truth universal. The ocean enchants as much as it terrifies, its beauty demanding reverence lest it consume. Another myth, half prayer and half curse, told of the black albatross, a bird that circled storms, its wings wider than sails, its eyes like burning coals. To see the bird was omen, for if it flew ahead the storm would part, but if it circled above the mast the storm would descend with fury. Sailors tied charms of bone and rope to ward off its gaze, muttering that no storm was random, that every tempest bore witness in wings. The black albatross became symbol not only of weather but of fate, its flight a reminder that life itself is fragile, balanced between blessing and ruin. Yet not all myths spoke of terror. Some offered hope, like the tale of the singing tides. In certain bays, sailors claimed, the tide itself hummed, a low resonance that vibrated through wood and bone. They believed these songs were voices of sea spirits, calming the waves, promising safe harbor to those who listened with humility. Villages built altars on such shores, not to gods of Olympus, but to the nameless tide itself, believing that to honor the song was to invite protection. Even now, when waves lap against coasts in rhythmic song, one hears echoes of this myth, the ocean itself a hymn to patience and peace. From northern waters came the story of the ice serpent, a creature said to slither beneath frozen seas, cracking ice with its breath, dragging hunters into depths. To explain sudden fissures and the vanishing of sleds, they imagined its scales of frost, its eyes glowing like aurora, its body stretching longer than rivers. But within terror lay survival wisdom, for the myth reminded hunters never to trust ice fully, to respect silence, to move with care. The ice serpent was not only monster but metaphor, the embodiment of fragility that turns stillness into death. The ninth forgotten myth tells of the starfish oracle, a creature said to rest upon rocks during full moon nights, its arms glowing faintly with constellations. Fishermen claimed that if one placed an ear against the oracle, it whispered futures, not in words but in feelings, guiding hearts toward decisions. Some claimed it saved marriages, others that it warned of storms, others that it demanded offerings of shells in exchange for prophecy. The starfish oracle was not templed but trusted, its strange shape a reminder that wisdom is often found in smallest forms, that even the humble carries mystery. And then there is the myth of the drowned clock, said to rest in a trench where time itself slows. Ships passing overhead reported strange phenomena, nights lasting forever, compasses spinning, men aging in days or not aging at all. They believed a great clock had fallen into the sea, still ticking, still ruling time but broken. This myth reflects not only fear of the unknown but awe, at times fluidity, the realization that sea is not only space but time itself, where past and present blur like currents, where eternity feels close. These are but the first whispers among the 100 forgotten myths. Yet already one senses how they speak not only of waves and storms but of human truths. Fear of death, longing for love, hunger for meaning, reverence for mystery. Each myth is a lantern in the dark, a reminder that the ocean has always been more than water, that it is mirror of soul, abyss of memory, teacher of humility. Forgotten by books yet alive in imagination, they return now not as superstition but as poetry, not as warning but as wisdom, not as fear but as comfort. And as the tide rises around us, as night deepens, as waves lull us into silence, we see that to listen to these myths is to fall asleep, not in ignorance but in awe, to drift not into forgetfulness but into remembrance, to rest not apart from the sea but within its eternal song. The ocean does not forget, and so the myths that mortals allowed to slip from their lips centuries ago still linger beneath its surface, woven into the sound of currents, written into the foam of waves, pressed like fossils into coral walls. If one listens closely, one might still hear them whispering, not only in the wind but in the rhythm of tides that never cease their eternal conversation with the moon. These myths once guided, once terrified, once comforted sailors who lived not with maps and engines, but with instinct and faith. Men and women who placed their survival into hands of the sea, and therefore shaped stories that carried truth, even when truth wore masks of fantasy. To gather them now is to step into a realm where imagination is survival, where every splash holds prophecy, where every silence carries warning. Among the forgotten is the tale of the glass sea, a legend of waters so clear and still that they turned invisible, making ships appear to float in midair above abyss. Sailors claimed that such waters revealed not only fish but faces of drowned men staring upward with open eyes, waiting for judgment. To sail across the glass sea was considered both miracle and curse, a glimpse of heaven and a reminder of hell. The myth endured because it mirrored the paradox of the ocean itself, which can be at once breathtakingly beautiful and terrifyingly honest, capable of revealing not only the world but the mortality of those who traverse it. Another myth spoke of the salt angels, beings said to rise from spray at dawn, their wings crystallized with salt, their voices like gulls crying across horizon. To see them was rare, but when they appeared, sailors believed their voyage would succeed. Mothers prayed that their sons at sea might glimpse a salt angel, for such a vision meant not only safe return but joy upon arrival. The angels demanded no temple and no prayer beyond humility, a myth that transformed routine spray into a message of hope, reminding sailors that even salt, bitter and stinging, can form into beauty when touched by morning light. From distant coasts came the story of the tide wolves, spectral creatures that prowled the shoreline at night. Their bodies were made of water and sand, their howls like crashing waves. Fishermen said they hunted not flesh but arrogance, dragging into sea any man who mocked tides or took more fish than needed. The myth was less warning of beasts and more lesson in restraint, a way to remind that greed is punished by forces larger than human desire, that the ocean itself enforces balance through mythic guardians. There was also the haunting tale of the Shell of Silence, a massive conch said to rest on an island known only to the dead. Sailors who pressed it to their ear claimed not to hear waves, but utter silence so vast that it erased thoughts, memories, even names. Some said the shell was gift, freeing men from pain of past, others that it was curse, stealing identity. The myth reflects an ancient truth, that silence is as powerful as sound, that to confront true silence is to risk losing oneself. In an age before engines and radios, when silence at sea could mean isolation, this myth gave shape to one of humanity's deepest fears, the silence that swallows. In northern tales there lived the myth of the frosted kraken, a monster so immense that its tentacles could wrap mountains, its breath turning waves to ice. It was said to dwell where warm currents met frozen seas, a creature born of contradiction, half flame, half frost. Its attacks were rare, but its legend explained sudden icebergs and storms that defied logic. To fear the frosted kraken was to respect the unpredictability of polar waters, where beauty and danger married, where life balanced on edges of paradox. The sixth myth of this chapter tells of the moonlit raft, an apparition said to appear on calm nights, glowing faintly as though made of starlight, drifting silently across waves. Sailors swore that those who boarded the raft vanished without trace, taken to another realm where stars lay within reach. Some claimed it was ferry to paradise, others that it was prison of dream from which no one awoke. The moonlit raft reminded sailors of temptation to leave reality for dream, of longing to escape hardship, of danger hidden in desire for ease. Another story, born in islands of fire, spoke of the ash mermaid. Unlike her sisters of beauty, this mermaid bore skin of charcoal, eyes like embers, hair that smoked like volcanic plume. She lured men not with song but with warmth, drawing them into waters heated by volcanic vents. Those who followed drowned not in cold but in boiling tides, their bodies left as warnings. Yet beneath terror lay respect for volcanoes beneath the sea, unseen yet alive, powerful enough to shape islands. The ash mermaid myth was a way to explain the heat and tremors of ocean floor, transforming geology into goddess. From coasts of Africa came tale of the singing shellfish, creatures whose clicking sounds at night formed melodies said to summon rain. Villages believed these songs were offerings to sky, carried by waves upward to clouds. If drought threatened, fishermen would sit by shore in silence, waiting for shellfish chorus to begin. To them, this myth was not fantasy but ritual, a recognition that sea and sky are partners, that every cycle of life is dialogue between elements. The singing shellfish myth remains forgotten by books but remembered by rhythms of waves still echoing their song. The ninth myth of this chapter tells of the compass star, a celestial body said to shine only for sailors lost at sea. Unlike known stars, it shifted constantly, visible only when despair was greatest. Those who saw it claimed it guided them home, but if greed guided their journey, the star vanished, leaving them adrift. The compass star was a reminder that guidance comes not from sky alone but from purity of intention, that navigation is both physical and moral, that the sea respects honesty more than charts. Then there is the tale of the eternal diver, a figure said to descend into sea without need for breath, searching eternally for a treasure he could never find. He was described as neither alive nor dead, his eyes glowing like lanterns, his hair trailing like kelp. Sailors feared meeting him, for his presence meant a voyage would be long and fruitless. Yet they also pitied him, for his endless search mirrored their own hunger for meaning. The eternal diver was allegory of desire without satisfaction, a myth reminding that pursuit without purpose becomes prison. These forgotten myths, when gathered, reveal a map not of coasts and currents but of human soul, Each myth is reflection of fear, of longing, of respect, of warning. They may seem strange to modern ears, yet their truths remain. The glass sea warns against illusion, the salt angels inspire hope, the tide wolves teach restraint, the shell of silence honors stillness, the frosted kraken embodies paradox. The moonlit raft tempts with dreams, the ash mermaid warns of hidden fire, the singing shellfish prays connection, the compass star guides with honesty, and the eternal diver teaches humility in pursuit. Together, they form a constellation of meaning across history's waves. As we rest in their stories, as we drift further into night, the sea itself becomes storyteller, weaving our dreams with its forgotten myths. For in listening to them, we do not escape reality, but embrace it more fully, reminded that the ocean is both cradle and grave, teacher and destroyer, silence and song. These myths do not belong to past alone, but to present. For as long as waves rise and fall, as long as stars guide, as long as hearts long, the myths live. And as eyelids grow heavy, as mind softens, as body drifts, we realize that to fall asleep with these stories is to awaken within them, to become sailor in an eternal voyage, carried forward by tides of imagination that never rest. The sea carries not only water but voices, and when sailors spoke of myths, they believed they were not inventing but listening, catching fragments of ancient truths carried by tides from one generation to the next. These voices did not belong only to gods or monsters, but to the sea itself, which they felt whispered through foam and roared through storms, speaking a language of metaphor that humans translated into story. To explore these forgotten myths is to walk into an endless hall where every wave is a doorway, every current a memory, every sound an echo of lives lived on fragile decks above an unfathomable abyss. Here the forgotten myths gather, each unique, yet together forming a grand symphony of belief. One of the oldest tales speaks of the Pearl of Shadows, a gem said to lie within the deepest trench, glowing faintly with stolen moonlight. Sailors claimed that those who possessed it could command tides, but none who sought it ever returned. The myth warned not against treasure, but against obsession. For men who chased the pearl ignored storms, defied reason, and were swallowed by sea. The Pearl of Shadows became symbol of desire unchecked, a lesson whispered into every tale of sailors who perished chasing wealth. Another myth told of the ocean's breath, a warm wind said to rise suddenly from calm seas, filling sails without warning. Some believed it was the sigh of a drowned goddess, others the laughter of sea children. The ocean's breath was unpredictable, yet always carried ships faster toward destination, a reminder that sometimes progress comes not by effort but by gift, not by calculation but by grace. Sailors would raise cups of wine when such wind arrived, toasting not luck but the unseen hand that carried them. There was also the tale of the coral crown, said to belong to a spirit queen beneath reefs. When storms shattered coral, sailors believed she had been angered, and when fish swarmed abundantly, they believed she smiled. Legends told that she chose her brides among drowning women, transforming them into coral guardians to expand her kingdom. This myth, like many, was both terror and comfort, reminding mortals that sea is sovereign, that every gift has ruler, that abundance is not accident but favor. From icy coasts came the story of the frozen tears, shards of ice said to fall from eyes of sea giants. Sailors claimed that when they melted in cup, they became water sweeter than any spring, curing thirst and fever. But if kept too long, they turned into salt, cursing greed. This myth offered not only survival wisdom in polar waters, but moral. Treasure is to be used, not hoarded. Blessings are to be shared, not locked away. Then there is the haunting tale of the drowned harp, an instrument said to rest within sunken ships, still playing faint music beneath waves. Fishermen swore they heard strings humming through hulls, melodies rising with bubbles. Some believed mermaids played the harps to lure men, others that drowned musicians still sought to comfort living. The myth reflects longing for continuity, the hope that art and beauty endure even when bodies perish, that music like waves never ends but transforms into another form. Another myth speaks of the sea lantern, a flame that burned underwater without fuel, appearing near wrecks to guide lost divers back to surface. Sailors claimed the lantern was spirit of a child lost at sea, eternally carrying light for others. When fishermen saw strange glows beneath waves, they prayed not fear but thanks, believing the child still protected them. This myth reveals how even tragedy can become hope, how grief transforms into guidance, how sea itself teaches that death is not silence but transformation. In islands surrounded by constant storms, people told of the cloud serpent, a beast woven from thunderclouds, scales of lightning, eyes of storm. It was said to coil above seas, breathing winds into sails or tearing masts apart. When hurricanes struck, sailors claimed they had angered the cloud serpent, failing to honor it with song. Villages chanted to skies, believing sound calmed the beast. The myth explained chaos through creature, but deeper it taught respect for storm, reverence for power beyond human reach. Another forgotten tale was the mirror fish, a creature whose scales reflected not faces but truths of heart. To catch it was dangerous, for those who looked into its scales sometimes died of despair, unable to bear honesty. Yet others claimed it freed them from lies, giving courage to live authentically. The mirror fish reminded that sea not only reveals geography but soul, that reflection can heal or break, that truth is double-edged like tide itself. There was the story of the eternal anchor, a massive relic said to rest at ocean floor, binding earth to sea. Without it, sailors believed continents would drift into chaos. When earthquakes shook, they claimed the anchor had loosened. Divers sought it in vain, always returning with nothing but stories of glimpsed chains thicker than ships. The eternal anchor myth reveals humanity's hunger for stability, the dream that even chaos rests upon foundation, that fragility has root. In warmer seas, sailors whispered of the flame jelly, a creature glowing like fire in darkness, drifting with elegance. They believed it carried souls of drowned children, lighting ocean to prevent loneliness. To harm one was sin, punished by storms. The myth reflects compassion projected onto mystery, a way to make sense of fragile beauty encountered in depths, transforming biology into theology. The 11th myth of this chapter tells of the ghost fleet, phantom ships said to sail silently across horizon under moonlight. They bore no crew, their sails tattered yet glowing. To witness them was omen of death or reminder of eternity, depending on heart of witness. Some captains steered toward them, hoping for guidance, others away in terror. The ghost fleet endured because ships embody both hope and loss, both journey and finality. Another tale spoke of the sea's whisper, a voice said to call sailors by name in moments of fatigue. Those who answered leapt into water and vanished. Yet others claimed if one ignored the whisper, strength returned, as if sea itself tested resolve. The myth reminded crews that voices in mind could be as deadly as storms, that endurance often meant resisting illusions. From coasts touched by deserts came myth of the sand tide, waves that carried grains instead of water, burying ships in dunes upon sea. These stories explained mirages of sand appearing on horizon, illusions of desert blending with ocean. The sand tide myth illustrates fear of disorientation, of horizon's trickery, of land and sea merging into confusion. Another forgotten myth was the rope of stars, said to hang from sky into ocean, shimmering at night like ladder between realms. Sailors swore some climbed it in dreams, never to return, vanishing into constellations. Others believed it lowered blessings, linking mortals with divine. The rope of stars myth merges astronomy with longing, expressing desire to bridge heaven and sea, to turn isolation into connection. There was also the tale of the hollow wave, a swell that rose high yet carried no water within, a cavern of air beneath surface. Ships caught within either sped forward faster than wind or collapsed when walls of wave fell. Sailors both feared and pursued the hollow wave, for it promised miracle and death in equal measure. The myth embodies paradox of risk and reward, of ambition and humility, lessons eternal as tide. The 17th myth tells of the sea's library, an imagined realm beneath waves where every drowned book and lost scroll gathered, guarded by crabs as librarians. Sailors joked that even words feared land's decay but found immortality underwater. The myth honored knowledge, imagining that even when fire and time destroyed, sea preserved. It was comfort to men who could not read but who valued story, believing ocean kept what they could not. Another story from colder waters spoke of the shivering maiden, a figure who walked across ice at night, her steps leaving trails that cracked into sea. She was said to sing lullabies that froze waves into silence, calming storms. Those who insulted her beauty, however, found their ships crushed by sudden flows. The myth personified both mercy and vengeance of frozen seas, giving voice to dangers of arrogance. Finally, there was the tale of the silent reef, a place where all sound vanished. Waves broke without noise, gulls flew in silence, even voices disappeared. Those who entered were filled with dread or peace depending on heart. Some said gods had created it as sanctuary for lost souls, others that it was prison of forgotten. The silent reef reminds us that absence is as powerful as presence, that silence can be as loud as storm, that the ocean's greatest gift is not only sound but stillness. These myths weave together like threads of net, each strand fragile yet together unbreakable. They were not written in books but remembered in hearts, carried in songs, preserved in superstitions. Though forgotten by scholars, they remain alive in rhythm of waves, in shimmer of fish, in roar of storm. To hear them again is to awaken within dream, to drift deeper into night with companions of imagination, to rest not in emptiness but in fullness of forgotten. And as eyelids grow heavier, as thoughts drift like ships into horizon, one realizes that myths are not lies but truths dressed in poetry, that the ocean itself is endless, storyteller, and that to fall asleep to its legends is to surrender to eternity itself. The forgotten myths of the sea move like shadows across the memory of waves, never still, never gone, lingering in corners of sailors' minds as warnings and wonders, half believed and half dreamed. To gather them is to wander into a gallery where each painting shifts under the eye, where truth and imagination blend, where fear becomes wisdom and desire becomes caution. In this chapter, we dive further, uncovering stories left behind, not because they were unworthy, but because time is ruthless, yet the sea has remembered them and now releases them once more. One of these myths tells of the silver tide, a phenomenon said to occur only once every 1,000 years, when the moon drew so close to Earth that it pulled a tide made not of water but of silver light. Ships caught in the silver tide sailed silently, their hulls glowing as if made of moonlight, their shadows erased. Those who returned spoke of visions of ancestors walking upon the glowing waves, guiding them to safety or condemning them to silence. The silver tide was both omen and miracle, a story that reminded sailors that the heavens and the sea are bound together in eternal dialogue, each pulling at the other's heart. Another story whispers of the Leviathan's eye, a whirlpool that sailors claimed was not water but gaze of the great sea monster itself. They said the Leviathan lay sleeping deep below, and when it blinked, whirlpools opened. To be caught in such a spiral was to be seen by the beast, to be measured by its regard. Those deemed unworthy were dragged into abyss, those deemed courageous were spat back out, their ships hurled to safety. The myth reflected fear of whirlpools, but also awe at judgment, the belief that survival was not random but earned. From distant Pacific islands came the tale of the coconut sirens, spirits who wore garlands of shells and coconut leaves, who sang from palm-lined shores to lure sailors into shallows where reefs waited. Unlike the classical sirens of Greece, these spirits promised not love but homecoming, their songs echoing voices of wives and children. Many ships wrecked upon such shores, and the myth became a lesson in longing, a reminder that homesickness can be as dangerous as lust, that heart's desire can blind as easily as beauty. There was also the myth of the sea's quill, a feather said to fall from wings of storm birds, carrying with it power to write destinies. Sailors believed that if they found such a quill floating in foam, they could inscribe wishes upon driftwood, and the sea would carry those wishes to gods. Some captains claimed entire voyages succeeded because they wrote names of destinations upon wood with invisible ink of salt water. The sea's quill myth illustrates humanity's hunger for agency, even in chaos, the need to believe that one can write fate upon waves. Another forgotten tale is that of the wailing buoy, a floating marker said to cry with voices of the drowned. Long before modern buoys, sailors swore they heard mournful sounds rising from sea, shaped by wind and hollow shells. They imagined these cries belonged to spirits demanding remembrance, warning others not to forget cost of ocean journeys. To pass near a wailing buoy was to be reminded of mortality, to sail with reverence, to honor those claimed by sea. The myth reveals how even objects can gain sacred weight when infused with grief. In colder waters, fishermen spoke of the white seal, a creature that could transform into woman when moonlight struck. These women wandered shores with hair like snow, their eyes reflecting sorrow of tides. To marry one was to gain wealth and abundance of fish, but if the seal's skin was ever returned to her, she vanished into sea. This myth, echoing across cultures, reflected both longing for union with sea and fear of its uncontainable nature. Love could be gained but never possessed, for sea belongs to itself alone. Another myth tells of the Lighthouse of Souls, a phantom tower said to appear only in storms, glowing upon cliffs where no building stood. Sailors who followed its light sometimes reached safety, others dashed upon rocks. Some claimed it was built by souls of drowned sailors to warn the living, others that it was trap laid by jealous spirits. The Lighthouse of Souls embodied both salvation and deception, teaching that not every light is trustworthy, that discernment is as vital as faith. From Mediterranean coasts came tale of the singing dolphin, a creature that appeared in times of despair, circling ships with melody that healed wounds and restored courage. Sailors believed it was messenger of gods, guardian of those who honored sea with kindness. To harm a dolphin was greatest sin, punished by storms and famine. The singing dolphin myth reflects how gratitude and compassion were projected upon creatures whose intelligence and joy seemed divine, transforming biology into myth. Another legend speaks of the phantom current, an invisible river within ocean that carried ships at unnatural speed. Some claimed it was gift of gods, others that it was curse dragging men to distant, unknown shores. Captains who returned from such journeys described strange constellations and new lands, fueling exploration. The phantom current myth illustrates how curiosity and fear mingle, how discovery itself is often explained by forces unseen, how ocean invites both expansion and disorientation. The 10th myth of this chapter is the black coral forest, an underwater realm said to stretch endlessly, its branches sharp as blades, its silence suffocating. Divers who entered claimed they heard whispers in coral, voices urging them deeper. Few returned. The black coral forest symbolized not only danger of reefs, but the seduction of darkness, the allure of descent, the eternal tension between curiosity and survival. Another story tells of the ocean's cloak, a great veil of mist that covered ships without warning, separating them from world. Within cloak, sailors lost track of time and direction, some returning days later without memory, others vanishing entirely. The ocean's cloak myth revealed fear of fog, but also deeper truth, that life itself can shroud vision, that uncertainty is constant companion, that humility is compass when maps fail. From northern isles came tale of the bone harp, an instrument said to be built from skeleton of sea beasts, played by winds through their hollow ribs. When storms rose, sailors believed they heard harps singing, either calming them or announcing death. The bone harp myth captured terror of storm sounds, transforming chaos into symphony, reminding sailors that even destruction carries music. There was also the myth of the endless net, said to drift across seas, catching not fish but souls. Sailors warned each other not to sleep upon deck when strange mists gathered, lest the net sweep them into afterlife. The endless net reflected belief that sea itself fishes for men, that death is not sudden but inevitable harvest, that mortality is woven into fabric of waves. Another tale spoke of the star whale, a creature said to swim across heavens, its body shining like constellation, diving into ocean at dawn. Sailors who saw it believed they were blessed, their voyages favored. The myth merged astronomy and sea, expressing human desire to connect cosmos and ocean, to believe that even sky creatures swim with tides. Then there is the myth of the rusted crown, a relic said to rest within wreck of a king's ship. Whoever found it would gain dominion not over land but over storms. Many searched, none returned. The rusted crown reminded sailors that ambition is as dangerous as weather, that kings too are swallowed by sea, that sovereignty belongs to tide alone. The 16th myth of this chapter speaks of the shadow diver, a figure who swam beneath ships, visible only as dark silhouette against moonlit water. Some said he was spirit testing courage, others that he sought revenge. To see him was omen of trials ahead, but also reminder that unseen presences accompany all voyages, that solitude at sea is illusion. Another tale tells of the blood tide, a current said to turn water crimson, not from algae or storm but from wrath of gods. Ships caught in it faced mutiny and madness, as if tide carried rage into hearts. The myth explained outbreaks of violence, reminding that environment shapes mind, that sea can alter soul. Finally, there is the story of the whispering kelp, forest beneath waves that moved as if speaking. Divers who listened claimed they heard names, warnings, even songs of future. To cut kelp was sacrilege, for it was considered living scripture of ocean. The whispering kelp myth reflects reverence for plant life, recognition that wisdom is not only in beasts or gods but in silent growth beneath waves. These myths continue the tapestry of forgotten lore, each thread shimmering with fear, beauty, lesson. The silver tide teaches awe of celestial cycles. The Leviathan's eye warns of whirlpools. The coconut siren's caution against longing. The sea's quill offers hope of agency. The wailing buoy embodies grief. The white seal reflects unpossessable love. The lighthouse of souls teaches discernment. The singing dolphin radiates compassion. The phantom current fuels curiosity. The black coral forest warns of a lure of darkness. The ocean's cloak speaks of uncertainty. The bone harp transforms storm into music. The endless net confronts mortality. The star whale connects cosmos and ocean. The rusted crown warns of ambition. The shadow diver embodies unseen tests. The blood tide shows influence of environment, and the whispering kelp honors silent wisdom. Together they remind us that ocean is not emptiness, but endless imagination, that myths are not falsehoods, but truths in disguise, that to rest in these legends is to sail upon eternal waves of meaning. The abyss is not empty. It is a cathedral of forgotten voices, a place where light surrenders and sound becomes scripture, where every myth that was ever spoken drifts downward like sediment until it rests among the bones of whales and the rusted iron of lost ships. To listen here is to discover that the sea has never been silent, but has sung in languages beyond comprehension, that the abyss itself is both tomb and library. The sailors who shaped myths understood this intuitively, for when they gazed into the darkness of the sea, they felt they were being gazed at in return, and so they filled that gaze with stories, both to explain and to endure. This chapter gathers those abyssal myths, tales born not of daylight but of shadow, not of safety but of the terrifying wonder that lurks where no sun dares descend. One myth spoke of the abyssal choir, a host of voices said to rise from trenches during nights of still water. Fishermen swore they heard songs vibrating through their hulls, harmonies too vast for human throats. Some claimed the choir were spirits of drowned civilizations, still singing hymns of remembrance. Others that they were creatures who communicated not with words but with resonance. The myth terrified and comforted, for to hear the abyssal choir was to know that one was never alone, that the ocean itself was alive with memory. Another tale told of the crystal Leviathan, a beast whose body shimmered with transparent flesh, within which one could see constellations glowing as though the night sky itself had been swallowed. Sailors believed it swam between worlds, carrying stars from one horizon to another. To witness it was to glimpse infinity, yet those who chased it were said to vanish, lost in its brilliance. The crystal Leviathan became symbol of ambition, the warning that not every light leads home, that wonder can be as deadly as storm. There was also the myth of the hollow trench, a canyon so deep it was said to be bottomless, swallowing not only ships but time itself. Men who sailed above reported strange sensations, clocks stopping, nights lasting longer, minds unraveling. The trench was imagined as wound in the body of the earth, a place where reality itself leaked away. To pass above it was to risk being unstitched, a myth that reflected both fear of the unknown and awareness that some mysteries are too immense to comprehend. From tropical waters came the story of the fire coral guardian, a spirit said to rise whenever divers disturbed reefs. Described as half human, half coral, glowing with red branches across her body, she punished those who harvested too much, but blessed those who offered shells or sang upon waters. The myth embodied ecology before the word existed, reminding communities that abundance is conditional, that sea protects itself, that respect is as vital as harvest. Another myth described the lantern widow, a ghostly figure said to drift upon waves at midnight, carrying a single glowing lantern. Sailors claimed she searched eternally for her husband lost to sea, and those who followed her light vanished into fog. Some pitied her, offering prayers. Others cursed her as lure of death. The lantern widow reminded sailors that grief itself haunts ocean, that love unended becomes eternal presence, that sea is not only water but longing without conclusion. There was also the tale of the spiral islands, a formation said to appear without warning, islets arranged in perfect spiral upon ocean surface. Ships entering its circle found themselves sailing endlessly, never reaching center, never escaping. Some claimed the islands were illusions conjured by sea spirits, others that they were entrances to another realm. The Spiral Islands myth reflects dread of disorientation, the way horizon can play tricks, the way human mind craves order even in chaos. Another forgotten story told of the glass sharks, creatures said to have bodies so translucent they were invisible until too late. Sailors explained sudden wounds and missing limbs with their attacks, swearing they felt jaws but saw nothing. To imagine such predators was to embody fear of unseen, to give shape to vulnerability, to remind that not all threats are visible. The glass sharks became metaphors for anxieties unnamed, dangers internal as much as external. From northern seas came myth of the bone whale, a monstrous skeleton said to swim without flesh, its ribcage glowing faintly with blue fire. It was said to consume souls rather than bodies, swallowing despair and leaving husks of men behind. Yet others claimed it carried burdens away, cleansing survivors of grief. The bone whale was both terror and mercy, its myth reflecting duality of destruction and healing, its image haunting imaginations long after tales ceased to be told. Another story tells of the endless echo, a cavern beneath waves where any sound repeated forever. Sailors who shouted into its mouth heard their voices return years later. Proof, they believed, that echoes stored memory of those lost. Some captains forbade singing near such coasts, fearing they would trap souls in stone. The endless echo myth reflects both wonder and dread of sound, the realization that voice can endure beyond life, that even words may refuse to die. The 10th myth of this chapter is the abyssal crown, a diadem said to rest upon throne of coral deep below, guarded by creatures unknown. Legends claimed it was forged from pressure itself, indestructible, shimmering with pearls larger than fists. Whoever wore it would rule not land but ocean currents. Divers who sought it never returned, their ambition crushed by depths. The abyssal crown was a reminder that sovereignty is costly, that sea belongs to none but itself, that crowns forged by ocean cannot be worn by man. Another tale whispered of the silent surge, a wave that rose without sound, striking ships before cries could be uttered. Survivors described eerie absence, as if world had been muted. The silent surge became symbol of inevitability, of death arriving without warning, of fate striking in silence. Sailors respected it not with fear, but with acceptance, a reminder to live with urgency, for end might come quietly. From ancient coasts came story of the sand spirits, figures said to emerge from beaches at dusk, their forms shifting like dunes, their eyes glowing like embers. They asked questions of sailors, riddles whose answers determined survival. Those who failed were pulled into sand, those who succeeded blessed with calm seas. The sand spirits myth reflected human need to find meaning in uncertainty, to imagine morality embedded even in grains of shore. Another forgotten legend is that of the blood coral tree, a massive growth said to rise from trench, branches glowing red, swaying as if alive. Sailors who saw it swore they heard heartbeats beneath water, as if coral itself lived. Some claimed it demanded offerings of life, dragging divers to entangle in branches. The blood coral tree myth captured awe of reef's beauty and danger, warning that not all wonder is safe to touch. The 14th myth of this chapter tells of the shadow current, an undersea river darker than surrounding water, moving with force unseen. Ships caught above it drifted off course, vanishing into unknown horizons. Some said it was pathway to underworld, others that it was breath of ocean itself. The shadow current myth reveals how currents beyond control shape destiny, how sea carries man where he does not intend, how humility is wiser than arrogance. From desert shores came tale of the glass oasis, a mirage upon water reflecting palaces and gardens. Thirsty sailors who chased it never returned, their ships wrecked upon reefs. The myth warned of illusion, of longing shaping vision, of danger hidden in desire. It was less geography than psychology, reflection of human thirst for paradise that blinds to reality. Another myth spoke of the bronze serpent, a creature coiled around pillars beneath sea, scales gleaming like metal. It was said to hold up continents, its shifting causing earthquakes. Sailors prayed to keep it still, fearing that their lives depended on its rest. The bronze serpent myth transformed geology into divinity, tectonics into myth, giving meaning to tremors that shook their fragile world. The 17th myth of this abyssal collection is the tears of foam, drops said to fall from sky when gods wept for humanity. Each tear turned into pearl when touched by sea, yet dissolved when grasped by greed. Sailors who found such pearls claimed luck, but those who hoarded them vanished. The tears of foam myth revealed moral truth disguised as wonder, teaching that gifts are blessings only when cherished, not consumed by desire. Another tale speaks of the phantom divers, ghostly figures said to climb aboard ships during night storms, dripping wet yet silent. They carried tools of unknown origin, repairing sails and ropes before vanishing. Some said they were spirits repaying debts, others that they were omens of death. To encounter phantom divers was to feel both gratitude and fear, to be reminded that help may arrive from unseen hands, but cost may be demanded later. Finally, there is the story of the abyssal throne, said to be carved from bones of titanic beasts, guarded by fish with eyes like lanterns. It was throne of forgotten king who once ruled seas, now abandoned yet waiting for air. Many claimed that storms were wars for throne, fought by unseen princes of ocean. The abyssal throne myth embodies human projection of politics onto nature, giving order to chaos, sovereignty to storm. Together, these abyssal myths deepen tapestry of forgotten lore, each a jewel of imagination shining against darkness. The abyssal choir sings memory, the crystal leviathan embodies ambition, the hollow trench warns of unknowable, the fire coral guardian demands respect. The lantern widow mourns eternally, the spiral islands caution against illusion, the glass sharks embody invisible threats, the bone whale reveals duality of mercy and terror, the endless echo preserves voice, the abyssal crown warns ambition, the silent surge embodies inevitability, the sand spirits teach morality, the blood coral tree warns beauty's danger, the shadow current reflects loss of control, the glass oasis reveals illusion, the bronze serpent explains tremors, the tears of foam honor humility, the phantom divers embody mystery of help, and the abyssal throne projects sovereignty into chaos. To listen to them is to hear ocean not as void but as storyteller, reminding us that every myth forgotten is still alive in waves, every echo preserved in abyss, every dream woven into foam. The tides are the ocean's heartbeat, pulsing endlessly, rising and falling like breath of a living being, and in their rhythm sailors once heard stories as old as moon itself. Every shift of water was read as message, every swell as omen, every retreat as reminder that nothing is permanent, that everything must ebb and flow. In this restless pulse, myths took form, born of repetition and return, of journeys outward and inward, of the eternal dance between sea and shore. The forgotten myths carried by tides remind us that ocean is not only vast expanse but cycle, not only chaos but rhythm, not only abyss but mirror of time itself. One such myth was the tide painter, a spirit said to walk along beaches at dawn, trailing brushes of foam behind her. Wherever she touched, shells rearranged into patterns, sand carved into symbols. Sailors who read them found warnings of storms or promises of safe passage. Some claimed she painted maps to treasures hidden offshore, others that she told fates of those who dared to look. The tide painter embodied the idea that shore is canvas, that ocean writes messages daily, that wisdom is there for those who learn to see. Another tale tells of the moon child, said to descend upon tides once every generation, walking upon water with hair of silver, eyes reflecting stars. This child carried both blessings and warnings, promising abundance to humble and ruin to arrogant. Villages claimed their prosperity began with such a visit, while others blamed famine on failing to heed her message. The Moonchild myth reveals how closely people linked moon's power to tides, turning lunar cycles into divine encounters, transforming astronomy into morality. There was also the story of the twin waves, said to be two brothers forever racing across ocean. When they collided, ships were destroyed, but when they parted smoothly, sailors enjoyed calm. People claimed storms were battles between these waves, jealous of each other's strength, yet tides reminded them of their unity, for without both there could be no rhythm. The twin waves myth is lesson in duality, in how rivalry and cooperation coexist, in how every force carries shadow of opposite. From distant coasts came myth of the golden shell, a relic said to wash ashore once in 1,000 years. Whoever held it could hear voices of every tide, every storm, every drowned sailor. The shell was said to bring wisdom too vast for human mind, often driving men mad. Yet it remained symbol of longing, that hunger to hold in one's hand secret of ocean. The golden shell myth reflects both attraction and danger of knowledge, the reminder that some truths are too heavy to bear. Another forgotten legend is the tale of the tide shepherd, an old man said to stride across shore at dusk, guiding waves as if they were flocks. With his staff of driftwood, he calmed waters or stirred them into frenzy. Children were told that if they disobeyed, the tide shepherd would lead tides to their homes and sweep them away. But beneath fear lay respect, for adults too honored the idea that ocean's power must be guided, that even waves have master. There was also the myth of the singing stones, rocks found upon beaches that hummed when tides touched them. Sailors carried such stones on journeys, believing they kept rhythm of home within them. When storms struck, they held stones to ears, calming their fear. The singing stones became symbols of belonging, portable echoes of coastlines, reminders that no sailor is rootless when carrying song of homeland. From colder seas arose myth of the frost tide, a swell that turned water to ice as it rose, encasing ships in sudden prison. Survivors told of hearing cracking laughter in winds, as if tide itself mocked human frailty. The frost tide was both phenomenon and parable, warning that safety is illusion, that sea shifts identity and heartbeat, that warmth is never guaranteed. Another story told of the sea bride's veil, a mist that rolled in from ocean with shimmer like silk. Villages said it was veil of goddess marrying sky, covering shore to hide sacred union. Those caught within mist were blessed if they moved with humility, cursed if they mocked. The sea bride's veil myth merged natural fog with reverence, transforming hazard into holiness, reminding mortals to tread softly even when vision blurred. The ninth myth of this chapter tells of the whale bones shore, a beach said to be lined not with sand but ribs of ancient leviathans. Sailors claimed tides arranged bones each night into new shapes, spelling words of warning. To walk upon that beach was to read fate itself, but those who ignored its message met ruin at sea. The whalebone shore became symbol of literacy beyond books, a script written in relics, a library authored by tides. There was also the tale of the eternal drummer, a spirit said to live beneath tides, pounding rhythm that controlled all waves. When drums beat faster, storms came. When slower, calms returned. Fishermen taught children to listen, claiming they could hear faint beats beneath surf. This myth reflects human desire to find order in chaos, to believe even most violent waves are parts of larger music, to hear storm not as noise but as composition. Another legend is that of the starfish crown, a diadem formed not of jewels but living starfish that clung together, glowing faintly in moonlight. Whoever wore it could command tides, yet crown devoured greedy wearers, dissolving them into foam. This myth was lesson in humility, teaching that authority is dangerous when misused, that ocean lends power only to those who serve it. From ancient ports came story of the merchant's curse, where tides returned goods thrown overboard. Sailors who cheated in trade found their discarded wares washed ashore again and again, marked by salt. Villages saw this as justice of sea, proof that ocean itself balanced dishonesty. The merchant's curse became tale repeated in markets, myth ensuring fairness where law failed, ocean enforcing morality. Another forgotten myth is the phantom tide, a swell said to strike inland with no warning, sweeping away villages. Survivors claimed they saw no storm, only wall of water shimmering like glass. This myth expressed fear of tsunamis before science named them, blending terror with reverence, reminding people that ocean reaches further than expected, that no place is safe from its call. There was also the story of the lantern crab, a creature said to crawl ashore at night with shell glowing like lamp. Fishermen followed its light to schools of fish, but if they harmed crab, light extinguished forever. The lantern crab myth embodies gratitude, projecting benevolence into smallest creature, turning survival into relationship, dependence into reverence. The 16th myth tells of the ocean's loom, an invisible machine said to weave tides into patterns that shape destiny. Sailors who closed their eyes in silence sometimes saw glimpses of woven futures, strands of foam linking them to unknown. This myth captured human sense that life is not random but fabric, every tide a thread, every voyage part of tapestry too vast to see. Another tale describes the black tide, a swell of dark water said to poison fish and stain hulls. Communities who faced sudden famine explained it through this myth, claiming gods had withdrawn favor. Rituals of cleansing followed, not for water but for human hearts, believing moral corruption brought blackness. The myth reveals projection of conscience into sea, turning ecology into ethics, hunger into reflection. The 18th myth speaks of the tidekeeper's bell, a bronze relic said to rise from surf once each century, ringing with thunderous sound. Whoever heard its tone was blessed with long life at sea, but cursed to never rest upon land. The myth warned of ambition, that endless wandering is also prison, that blessing can become curse when balance is broken. From coasts of Asia came tale of the jade turtle, said to carry tides upon its shell. Each marking on its back represented currents, and when turtle dove, tide shifted. Fishermen carved turtle charms, believing they invited calm. The jade turtle myth merged animal with cosmos, expressing faith that balance rests upon enduring symbols, that strength is gentleness disguised. Finally, there is the story of the silver net, said to descend from sky into sea at equinox, catching stars within waves. Sailors who glimpsed it claimed luck beyond measure, yet those who sought to seize it drowned. The silver net myth spoke of gifts that must be witnessed, not possessed, teaching that wonder is not ownership, that beauty is reward enough. Together these tidal myths flow like rhythm of waves, each returning again and again with lesson. The tide painter writes wisdom upon sand. The moon child embodies cycles of blessing and ruin. The twin waves teach duality. The golden shell warns against hunger for truth too vast. The tide shepherd guides respect. The singing stones anchor belonging. The frost tide teaches humility. The sea bride's veil sanctifies fog. The whalebone's shore writes prophecy. The eternal drummer composes storm. The starfish crown warns of authority's cost. The merchant's curse enforces justice. The phantom tide reveals reach of ocean. The lantern crab glows with gratitude. The ocean's loom weaves destiny. The black tide warns of conscience. The tidekeeper's bell warns ambition. The jade turtle embodies balance. The silver net teaches wonder. To rest in their rhythm is to hear ocean as not enemy but teacher, not chaos but wisdom, not void but eternal companion. Storms have always been sermons of the sea, fierce and unrelenting, filled with thunder that speaks in a language older than words. For sailors of ancient days, storms were never accidents of nature but messages, either punishments from unseen powers or trials set to measure their resolve. Every bolt of lightning carried story. Every crash of wave became a phrase. Every gust of wind was read as breath of spirits. From this constant dialogue between humans and storms emerged myths that did not simply explain weather but offered meaning, discipline, and reverence. To explore these forgotten myths is to step into theater where sky and sea perform together, their drama shaping belief and memory. One of the most haunting myths tells of the Tempest Mother, a colossal spirit said to give birth to storms from her endless womb. Sailors described her as a woman whose body stretched across the horizon, her hair trailing like clouds, her tears falling as rain. When she wept gently, seas blessed fishermen with calm harvests. But when grief overwhelmed her, cyclones rose, tearing ships apart. The myth reminded mortals that storms are expressions of emotion, that grief and rage move through world like weather, that humanity too mirrors the Tempest Mother with their own moods of destruction and mercy. Another tale speaks of the chain lightning serpent, a creature of pure electricity that slithered from cloud to wave, leaving trails of fire upon sea. Sailors who saw it coiling above their masts fell to knees, praying not for survival but for forgiveness, for they believed the serpent punished arrogance. Some claimed that those struck by lightning were not destroyed but carried into serpent's body, transformed into sparks within its scales. The chain lightning serpent myth reflects awe at raw power, transforming chaotic bolts into structured creature, reminding that order can be found even in violence. There was also the myth of the storm harp, an invisible instrument said to hang across horizon. Winds plucked its strings, thunder became its percussion, waves its chorus. Sailors who listened with humility heard not chaos but music, guidance hidden in melody. Some claimed they predicted storms by learning patterns of song. Others swore that listening calmed fear. The storm harp myth embodies resilience, the ability to translate terror into beauty, destruction into art, storm into symphony. From tropical waters came story of the hurricane twins, spirits who danced across oceans, one spinning clockwise, the other counterclockwise. Their dance was said to generate whirlwinds, their rivalry tearing sails, their passion carving coasts. Yet when they embraced, seas calmed, skies cleared. The hurricane twins myth reflects human recognition that conflict and union shape world, that destruction and peace are two steps of same dance. Another forgotten legend is that of the thunder whale, a beast whose breath roared like thunder, whose leap split skies with lightning. Sailors feared to hear thunder without clouds, for they believed whale breached below, striking waves with divine force. Some tribes honored thunder as voice of this whale, seeing storms not as threat but as presence of sacred beast. The thunder whale myth transformed terror into reverence, reminding that even danger can be holy. There was also the tale of the rainmaker's net, a celestial mesh said to hang above seas. When shaken by gods, rain fell, nourishing crops, but when torn by neglect, floods consumed coasts. Sailors believed they could hear nets straining during storms, its cords snapping in thunder. This myth embodied human recognition that balance sustains, that excess of blessing can destroy, that even water must be measured. Another story told of the black squall rider, a phantom figure said to gallop clouds upon skeletal horse, wielding whip of wind. Wherever he rode, storms followed, his laughter echoing like thunderclaps. Some captains claimed they glimpsed him during tempests, silhouette etched against lightning, a reminder that no storm was impersonal, that chaos bore face and name. The black squall rider became both terror and motivation, urging sailors to hold courage even when shadow loomed above. From distant archipelagos came the myth of the singing stormbird, a creature with wings of vapor and voice of rain. When it circled ships, storms eased, but when it fled horizon, tempests struck with vengeance. Villages built effigies of stormbirds to call their protection, believing that honoring beauty calmed rage. The singing stormbird myth reflects truth that gratitude and respect are shields, that reverence itself can alter outcome, that storms are softened when one listens rather than resists. Another myth spoke of the endless cyclone, a storm said to circle Earth eternally, invisible to most but occasionally swallowing ships. Survivors claimed they lived entire years within cyclone, trapped in spinning world, before being spat out decades later unchanged in age. The endless cyclone myth embodies fear of entrapment, of cycles without exit, of eternity mistaken for safety. It reminds that repetition can be prison, that time itself can feel storm. The 10th myth of this chapter tells of the fire rain, drops said to fall not as water but flame, searing sails, igniting waves. Sailors swore such storms were born when gods clashed above, their sparks descending as fiery rain. To witness it was terror and awe, proof that heavens too are battleground. The fire rain myth reflects human projection of conflict into cosmos, transforming meteorological mystery into divine war. Another tale describes the silent storm, a tempest that rose without sound. No thunder, no rain upon deck, only walls of wind crushing sails in silence. Survivors emerged trembling, claiming silence was worse than roar, absence more dreadful than presence. The silent storm myth captures truth that fear is magnified when familiar cues vanish, that human mind requires sound to anchor meaning, that silence itself is violence. From northern seas came legend of the frost gale, winds so cold they froze sails into stone, cracking wood into shards. Sailors described hearing whispers in wind, voices urging surrender. The frost gale myth reflects recognition that cold is as deadly as fury, that stillness can kill as surely as storm, that surrender is temptation whispered by nature itself. Another myth told of the cloud forge, where gods were said to hammer weapons in skies, sparks falling as lightning, strikes resounding as thunder. Storms were thus read as craftsmanship, creations of divine blacksmiths shaping tools of war or instruments of peace. Sailors felt awe not at destruction but at creativity, storms reimagined as artistry. The cloud forge myth reveals resilience of imagination, ability to transform fear into admiration, chaos into craft. There was also the tale of the storm oracle, an old woman said to wander decks unseen, whispering predictions during lightning strikes. Captains who listened sometimes steered to safety, others ignored and perished. The storm oracle became embodiment of intuition, myth teaching that wisdom often comes in flashes, that survival depends on listening not only to maps but to whispers within chaos. The 15th myth tells of the rainbow harbinger, a radiant arch said to rise from storm's heart, not after rain but during its fury. To witness rainbow amidst thunder was sign of survival, promise that God smiled even through rage. The rainbow harbinger myth reflects hope within despair, color within darkness, beauty within destruction, reminder that storms end even while they rage. Another story describes the shadow fleet, phantom ships revealed only during lightning flashes, vanishing in darkness between. Sailors swore these ships sailed forever within storms, crewed by souls too restless to find shore. To see them was omen of endless wandering, warning to cherish harbors while they remain. The shadow fleet myth reflects human fear of purposeless voyage, of eternity without destination, of life adrift. From southern waters came tale of the monsoon seraphs, angels clothed in rain, descending to bless fields while terrifying sailors. Their wings shimmered with drops, their voices roared as thunder. Some believed they carried prayers from farmers to sky, others that they punished greed. The monsoon seraphs myth merges agriculture and sea, revealing how storms connect worlds, blessing one life while threatening another. Another forgotten legend is the tempest mirror, a surface of sea that turned to glass during lightning, reflecting not sky but future. Sailors who gazed upon it claimed to see visions, some of safe return, others of death. To stare too long was danger, yet to ignore was waste. The tempest mirror myth embodies temptation of knowledge, cost of foresight, eternal tension between ignorance and wisdom. Finally, there was tale of the thunder crown, a circlet said to descend with storms, flashing across waves like jewel of fire. Whoever seized it gained power to command storms, yet was consumed by lightning before long. The thunder crown myth warns against mastery of forces too vast, teaching that sovereignty belongs not to man but to ocean and sky, that storms are teachers, not servants. Together, these storm myths form chorus of awe, fear, and reverence. The tempest mother embodies emotion. The chain lightning serpent punishes arrogance. The storm harp transforms chaos into music. The hurricane twins reveal dance of conflict and union. The thunder wail sanctifies power. The rainmaker's net teaches balance. The black squall rider embodies chaos with face. The singing stormbird blesses gratitude. The endless cyclone warns of entrapment. The fire rain dramatizes divine war. The silent storm terrifies with absence. The frost gale whispers surrender. The cloud forge celebrates creation. The storm oracle honors intuition. The rainbow harbinger promises hope. The shadow fleet warns against purposelessness. The monsoon seraphs connect worlds. The tempest mirror tempts with foresight. The thunder crown warns ambition. To listen to them is to recognize that storms are not only threats but scriptures, each strike of lightning a verse, each gust a lesson, each rainbow a promise. In surrendering to their myths, we learn resilience, patience, humility, and awe. Lessons as vital on land as at sea, teachings carried forward even now as we drift into sleep, guided by voices of forgotten legends. Every ocean voyage has carried with it the weight of imagination, and nowhere is that imagination more fertile than in the creatures said to dwell beneath waves. While storms and tides give rhythm to human fear, the creatures invented by sailors and storytellers give it flesh, form, and gaze. Each eye gleaming from darkness, each shadow moving just beyond lantern light, became seed for myth. To meet a creature of ocean was not simply to encounter biology, but to confront mystery itself. In this chapter, we explore forgotten beings, born from dread, reverence, and awe. Creatures that never truly lived in water yet refused to die in story. One such myth is the phantom ray, a colossal manta said to glide silently beneath ships, its wingspan longer than masts, its body glowing faintly blue like submerged moon. Sailors swore that when it rose to surface, it created stillness, silencing wind and freezing tide. Those who saw it were torn between awe and terror, for its beauty was divine, but its presence heralded doom. Some believed it fed not on flesh but on courage, stealing bravery until crews collapsed in despair. The phantom ray became symbol of hopelessness, reminder that beauty itself can unnerve, that silence can be more dreadful than roar. Another tale tells of the shell serpent, a snake-like beast whose body was encrusted with countless shells, each one home to trapped soul. It slithered along coasts, leaving trails of broken shells like footprints of sorrow. Sailors believed storms broke when shell serpent shed its scales, each falling shell spawning whirlpool. To slay it was impossible, for each strike freed more souls, multiplying its power. The shell serpent myth reflected fear of endless consequence, the truth that some cycles only grow when resisted, that violence can feed what it seeks to kill. There was also the legend of the lantern eel, a creature dwelling in deepest trenches, its body lined with glowing orbs that spelled words across dark water. Divers who glimpsed it believed it wrote messages from gods, each light pulsing like scripture. Some followed its trails for days, only to vanish, swallowed by abyss. The lantern eel myth reflects awe at bioluminescence, imagination turning natural wonder into divine alphabet, revealing human hunger to read meaning where none is written. From northern fjords came story of the ice kraken, a cousin to legendary beast, but forged of frozen flesh and teeth of icicles. When it surfaced, seas turned solid, trapping ships in instant prisons. Its roars echoed like glaciers breaking. Unlike ordinary kraken myths, the ice kraken was not mindless terror but embodiment of winter's dominion, proof that cold itself could wear face of monster. The ice kraken legend reminded sailors that sea is not only water but season, that climate too can kill with jaws. Another forgotten creature was the coral golem, a being said to rise from reefs, body composed of living coral colonies that shifted and grew as it walked. It defended underwater palaces, punishing those who chipped coral or spilled blood upon reef. Sailors believed it could walk onto shore, each step leaving tide pools in sand. To face it was to fight ocean's very architecture, to realize that environment itself could rise as guardian. The coral golem myth merged ecology and fear, teaching protection through terror. Another tale described the glass octopus emperor, ruler of unseen kingdom, with body transparent as crystal, eyes glowing red as magma. Sailors swore that when he extended arms, he controlled currents, drawing ships into spirals. His empire was not built of stone but of pressure, his throne weighed itself. The glass octopus emperor represented ultimate sovereignty, unseen yet absolute, a myth that reflected sense of power felt in currents, invisible yet irresistible. The seventh myth tells of the sand whale, a colossal creature that swam not in water but in sands of coasts, diving beneath beaches and emerging at tides. Fishermen claimed it swallowed entire villages when angered, leaving behind only smooth plains of sand. To respect dunes was to appease sand whale, to desecrate them was to risk erasure. The sand whale became lesson in humility before land shaped by sea, teaching that even shore breathes with hidden giants. From southern waters came myth of the fire jellyfish, its bell burning with flame even beneath water, trailing sparks that ignited sails. Survivors described patches of sea glowing like embers, waves themselves appearing aflame. The fire jellyfish was not mere terror but omen, said to herald transformation, destruction necessary for renewal. The myth reflects how fire and water, opposites in reality, could merge in imagination, creating creature of paradox that warned and promised simultaneously. Another legend spoke of the spine-back turtle, whose shell was covered in jagged ridges sharp as spears. Said to carry islands upon its back, it resented intrusion, shaking violently to drown settlements. Earthquakes near coasts were blamed on its stirrings, eruptions, its sneezes. The spine-back turtle embodied recognition that land itself is unstable, that ground is not secure but rests upon forces beyond control. The myth gave shape to tectonic uncertainty, translating geology into creature. There was also the story of the mirror fish, a silver-scaled being said to reflect faces not as they were but as they would become. Fishermen, who glimpsed themselves in its shimmer, claimed to see old age, death, or sometimes glory. Catching one was considered curse, for to look too deeply was to know too much. The mirror fish myth reveals human ambivalence toward future, desire to know and fear of certainty, ocean turned into oracle both irresistible and unbearable. Another tale spoke of the iron seals, creatures armored with metallic skin, invulnerable to harpoons, striking with jaws that shattered wood. They defended sunken kingdoms of forgotten kings, attacking all who dared approach. Yet legends also claim they guided noble sailors to safety, recognizing honor even in humans. The iron seals reflected duality of guardianship, protectors and punishers, teaching that strength must be tempered with justice. From eastern coasts came story of the serpent of clouds, a creature said to rise from ocean into sky, weaving storms with coils of vapor. It swam between sea and cloud, uniting elements. Sailors who saw it claimed storms were its breath, rain its sweat, thunder its hiss. The serpent of clouds myth reveals understanding that sea and sky are inseparable, one system, one being, linked through creature larger than imagination. Another myth described the crimson shrimp king, tiny in size yet commanding vast armies of crustaceans. When angered, his swarms devoured ships plank by plank, leaving skeletons of vessels afloat. He was said to wear a crown of ruby dust, shimmering at dawn. The Crimson Shrimp King myth embodies lesson that even smallest creatures hold power when united, teaching respect for humble and unseen. The 14th myth tells of the Whispering Seal, animal whose cries carried words of prophecy when heard at night. Villages listened for its call to predict storms or fates of loved ones. Some believed seals carried souls of drowned, their voices echoing warnings. The Whispering Seal myth illustrates how natural sounds become sacred when charged with meaning, how even cry of animal becomes divine script. Another story is that of the abyss wolves, packs of shadowy creatures said to roam trenches, their howls vibrating through hulls. They hunted souls rather than bodies, dragging fear from men until despair consumed them. Yet some claimed they protected lost spirits, guiding them home. The abyss wolves myth captured imagination of companionship in darkness, creatures both hunters and guides, embodying paradox of fear and comfort. From remote isles came myth of the vine serpent, a being whose body tangled with kelp, dragging ships into gardens of green beneath surface. Sailors feared kelp forests not only for entanglement, but for presence of this serpent, which they imagined as gardener of abyss, cultivating beauty while destroying intruders. The vine serpent myth reflects awareness of ecological traps, forests of sea turned into guardians. Another tale describes the horned dolphin, beast with spiraled horns like rams, used to pierce hulls. Unlike playful dolphins, it was aggressive, protector of seas against trespass. Yet some claimed it spared children, guiding them ashore. The horned dolphin myth embodies complexity, cruelty, and compassion entwined, revealing projection of justice onto creatures. Finally, there is story of the pearl golem, a giant humanoid formed from pearls fused together, rising only when seas were bloodied by battle. It collected bodies of fallen, encasing them within shell of pearl, preserving memory of violence. To see pearl golem was to remember cost of conflict, to recognize that sea records blood as well as beauty. The myth transformed tragedy into monument, ocean into sculptor of remembrance. Together, these creature myths deepen our exploration of forgotten legends, each giving body to human fear, desire, or wisdom. The phantom ray embodies beauty that unnerves. The shell serpent warns of cycles that multiply when resisted. The lantern eel transforms light into language. The ice kraken reveals power of season. The coral golem enforces respect. The glass octopus emperor embodies unseen sovereignty. The sand whale teaches humility. The fire jellyfish unites opposites. The spineback turtle personifies instability. The mirrorfish warns against knowledge. The iron seals embody duality of guardianship. The serpent of clouds unites elements. The crimson shrimp king exalts small power. The whispering seal transforms sound into prophecy. The abyss wolves reveal paradox of fear and comfort. The vine serpent guards ecological traps. The horned dolphin embodies justice. The pearl golem preserves memory. Each creature never truly lived yet still exists, not in water but in minds, not in biology but in stories, reminding us that myth itself is a living beast, swimming eternally in ocean of human imagination. The sea has always been more than a body of water. It has been a judge, a giver, a punisher, a parent whose moods could nourish or destroy with equal intensity. For sailors and villagers alike, the ocean was never neutral. It was always personal, always intentional. And so they filled it with myths of curses and blessings, imagining waves as hands that offered gifts or delivered punishment. These myths survived because they gave meaning to fortune and disaster, because they allowed humans to see the ocean not as random but as moral, a realm where justice could be found even when land's laws failed. In this chapter, we dive into these forgotten stories of favor and wrath, tales of divine generosity and relentless retribution, each shaping the way mortals lived with the tides. One myth told of the blessing of salt, a gift said to have been given when humans first tasted ocean water. In ancient stories, gods allowed men to drink from rivers of sweetness, but sailors carried flasks of salt water aboard ships to remind them of humility. Legend said that once each century salt turned sweet, but only for those who were pure of heart. To encounter sweet sea was to be assured of safe return. The myth reminded that salt itself, though bitter, is preservative, that even hardship preserves life. Another tale speaks of the curse of the forgotten name. Sailors who failed to honor sea spirits with offerings before voyage were said to lose their names in the depths. Without name, they became invisible to gods and ancestors, fated to wander eternally at sea. This curse reflected fear of anonymity, the horror of dying without memory, the importance of ritual in anchoring identity. It reminded men that neglect breeds erasure, that names too are fragile vessels. There was also the story of the blessing of the tide child, a baby said to be born upon beach when moon and sun aligned. Villages that raised such a child were promised generations of calm seas, fish abundance, and protection from storms. Yet the child could never leave coast, for to step too far inland was to weaken bond. This myth fused family and environment, teaching that blessings are conditional, that prosperity requires both guardianship and sacrifice. From distant islands came the tale of the curse of the salt chains, where men who enslaved others at sea found their ships bound by invisible links of water. No matter how hard they rowed or how strong wind blew, ships remained motionless until captives were freed. The myth reflected justice imagined in ocean itself, a force that shackled oppressors until they recognized humanity. It taught that exploitation invites bondage, that freedom cannot be stolen without consequence. Another legend is the blessing of the compass star, a celestial light said to descend upon horizon in times of despair, guiding lost ships home. Unlike North Star fixed in sky, compass star moved across water, hovering until course was set. Sailors who followed it swore they returned safely no matter the odds. Yet to ignore it was to invite storms. The compass star myth embodies hope, symbol of guidance in chaos, light promising direction when all seems lost. There was also the tale of the curse of the silent harbor. A village that mocked drowning sailors was said to fall under silence, their harbor empty, their nets barren. For decades, no fish entered their waters, and winds avoided their sails. The myth taught communities to honor strangers, to respect misfortune of others, to recognize that cruelty ripples outward into famine. The silent harbor curse became parable of empathy, ocean enforcing kindness. Another story told of the blessing of the whale song. Sailors who encountered whales singing at night were promised long lives, their children inheriting courage of giants. Some cultures believed that touching whale foam blessed hands with healing power. To hear whale song was to be chosen, proof that one's voyage was aligned with harmony of ocean. The myth reflects reverence for creatures whose voices carry across continents, transforming sound into sacred promise. The eighth myth in this chapter is the curse of the empty horizon. Captains obsessed with conquest, who plundered without gratitude, were said to find horizon extending endlessly. No matter how far they sailed, land never appeared. Supplies dwindled, crew perished. They sailed into eternity, punished not by storm but by absence. The myth reveals fear of futility, warning that greed leads not to abundance but to endless pursuit. From Mediterranean coasts came story of the blessing of the foam crown. Fishermen who rescued drowning sailors found their heads crowned with foam shaped like laurel, a sign of divine favor. For a year their nets overflowed, storms parted before them. Yet the foam crown dissolved if they boasted, for blessing thrived only in humility. The myth reflected value of modesty, teaching that good deeds must be reward in themselves. Another forgotten legend is the curse of the drowned bell. A monastery bell, stolen by pirates and thrown into sea, was said to toll beneath waves during storms. Those who heard it were doomed, their ships pulled downward by unseen ropes. The curse warned against sacrilege, against theft of sacred objects, teaching that ocean itself defended sanctity when men failed. There was also the story of the blessing of the star shells, rare shells that glowed faintly at night, washing ashore only when moon turned red. Sailors who carried them aboard were said to always find favorable winds, but only if shells were shared among crew. To hoard one was to invite betrayal. The myth reinforced unity, teaching that blessings multiply when divided, that ocean favors cooperation over selfishness. The 13th myth tells of the curse of the sunken oath, where sailors who broke promises found their ships besieged by phantom hands dragging them under. Survivors described seeing pale fingers gripping hulls, whispering words of broken vows. The curse reflected sacredness of words at sea, where trust was lifeline and betrayal equivalent to murder. It reminded that promises weigh heavy when carried upon waves. Another tale describes the blessing of the dolphin circle. When dolphins surrounded ship in perfect ring, sailors rejoiced, believing voyage blessed with fortune. No storm could breach circle, no predator dared attack. The circle symbolized unity, protection, joy. To witness it was to know ocean smiled. The myth transformed observation of animal behavior into promise of peace, teaching that kindness of creatures reflects kindness of sea. From Asian shores came the story of the curse of the hungry lantern, where fishermen who lit false lanterns to lure ships to wreck found their own villages swallowed by tide. Ocean punished deception, ensuring greed returned to devour source. The myth reinforced honesty, teaching that betrayal of trust destroys community. It reflects universal recognition that lies corrode survival. Another myth spoke of the blessing of the coral ring, a natural formation said to encircle island villages with invisible barrier. Storms broke against it, predators avoided it, fish swarmed within. Yet the blessing endured only if islanders never harmed coral. This myth preserved reef ecology long before science explained its function, reminding that gratitude sustains abundance. The 17th myth tells of the curse of the frozen mast. Sailors who mocked spirits of sea were said to awaken one dawn with masts encased in ice, though seas remained warm. No fire could thaw them, no tool break them, ships drifting useless until humility returned. The frozen mast curse embodied punishment through absurdity, a reminder that arrogance immobilizes progress, that pride is prison disguised as strength. Another story is that of the blessing of the pearl tears, drops said to fall from eyes of sea goddess when sailors prayed sincerely. Each tear turned into pearl within waves, gifts to those who showed devotion. Villages prospered from such pearls, yet they vanished when greed dominated. The myth reminds that generosity flows from gratitude, not demand, that blessings are nurtured, not seized. Finally, there was the legend of the curse of the black compass, a navigational tool said to point only toward death. Captains who trusted it sailed into storms, whirlpools, reefs. Some claimed it was forged by jealous spirit of navigation to mock human arrogance. The curse warns against false guidance, teaching that tools without wisdom destroy, that navigation requires humility as much as skill. Together, these curses and blessings form moral fabric of sea myths, each wave carrying story of justice. The blessing of salt reminds that hardship preserves. The curse of forgotten name warns of erasure. The tide child blesses guardianship. The salt chains punish slavery. The compass star guides in despair. The silent harbor enforces empathy. The whale song offers harmony. The empty horizon punishes greed. The foam crown honors modesty. The drowned bell punishes sacrilege. The star shells reward unity. The sunken oath punishes betrayal. The dolphin circle protects with joy. The hungry lantern punishes lies. The coral ring sustains ecology. The frozen mast punishes arrogance. The pearl tears reward gratitude. The black compass warns against false guidance. Each myth is more than tale. It is ocean's law, sea's scripture, morality written in salt and foam. To rest within them is to hear ocean not as chaos but as conscience, waves speaking as judge and comforter, reminding humanity that survival is more than strength. It is honor. The sea never ends, and so neither do its stories. What we call forgotten are merely whispers waiting beneath the tide. What we call lost are only voices resting in the deep. What we call silence is song too low for human ears. To end this journey through 100 forgotten myths of the ocean is not to close the book, but to lay it upon the waves, trusting that currents will carry it onward into dreams. This final chapter gathers the last constellation of legends, completing the circle, uniting blessings and curses, storms and stillness, creatures and echoes, showing that the sea holds within itself the entire range of human imagination, and that to fall asleep to its myths is to drift into eternity. The first tale of this closing chorus is the myth of the eternal lighthouse, a tower said to rise only when sailors surrendered themselves to sea without fear. Its beam pierced storms and darkness, guiding them to unseen harbors. Yet it was invisible to those who clung too tightly to control. The eternal lighthouse symbolized surrender, reminding that sometimes salvation lies not in force but in release, not in command but in trust. Another legend tells of the ocean's book, a colossal tome said to float upon horizon, its pages made of foam, its ink written in salt. Each wave turned a page, each tide added a line. To those who gazed with patience, words appeared, revealing secrets of origin and destiny. Yet to grasp book was impossible, for it dissolved upon touch. The Ocean's Book myth reminds us that knowledge is experience, not possession, that truth can be read but never owned. From ancient ports came tale of the mirror tide, a current that reflected not sea but soul. Sailors who sailed into it saw not water but their own hearts magnified, their flaws swelling into storms, their virtues calming waves. Some returned transformed, others never escaped reflection. The mirror tide myth teaches that voyage is inner as much as outer, that ocean carries mirror of human spirit. Another story speaks of the thousand voices wave, a breaker that carried within it every myth ever told. When it crashed upon cliffs, sailors swore they heard words of ancestors, cries of lost friends, laughter of gods. To witness it was to stand in cathedral of memory. The thousand voices wave myth reflects belief that nothing is ever truly lost, that sea preserves voices as it preserves shells, carrying them forward for eternity. There was also the tale of the golden horizon, a line where sky and water merged into pure light. Captains who pursued it never returned, yet their ships were sometimes glimpsed in sunsets, glowing like embers. Some believed they found paradise, others that they dissolved into light itself. The golden horizon myth embodies longing, that eternal hunger for destination beyond reach, reminding that hope is journey as much as end. Another forgotten myth is the curse of the stone sailors, men who defied gods and swore they feared nothing at sea. Their arrogance was punished, their bodies turned to stone upon decks, ships drifting eternally with statues for crew. Villagers claimed to see such vessels, haunting reminders of pride petrified. The myth warns that arrogance is anchor, that defiance without reverence invites ruin. From remote isles comes the story of the rainbow fathoms, a depth beneath waves where colors burned brighter than surface sky. Divers who descended too far never returned, but their eyes, said to float back upward, shone with prisms, glimmering like jewels. This myth reveals awe at unseen beauty, warning that desire for wonder can destroy, that some depths are too vivid for survival. Another tale describes the blessing of the ocean's breath, a wind so gentle it carried scent of every flower, every forest, every hearth left behind. Sailors believed it visited only those who longed purely for home, guiding them back with fragrance. The ocean's breath myth connects memory with survival, teaching that longing itself can be compass, that heart too is navigational tool. There is also the legend of the celestial whale, said to carry the Milky Way upon its back, diving into sea at dawn and resurfacing at night. Stars were believed to be water droplets clinging to its skin, shaken free when it breached. To see its leap was to be blessed with vision of eternity. The celestial whale myth merges cosmos and ocean, teaching that universe itself swims, that all creation is ocean in another form. Another story told of the last harbor, a port said to exist at edge of world, where drowned sailors dock their phantom ships. Its piers are endless, its lanterns never extinguished, its air filled with smell of salt and eternity. Those who dreamed of it often felt peace, believing death at sea was not end but arrival. The last harbor myth offers comfort, transforming loss into homecoming, making mortality a continuation, not an end. The 11th myth of this final chapter speaks of the silver anchor, a relic forged from star itself, cast into sea by gods to hold world steady. When storms threatened to overturn creation, anchor held fast, its chains stretching into heavens. Sailors prayed to it, imagining that every pause of wind, every calm of tide, was moment anchor gripped tighter. The silver anchor myth reflects need for stability, belief in unseen foundation that prevents collapse. Another tale describes the curse of the ever-hungry reef, a formation said to drift across ocean, devouring ships endlessly. No map could mark it, no chart predict it. Survivors claimed reef changed shape, alive in hunger. The myth represented unpredictability of reefs, transforming geography into predator, teaching vigilance where complacency kills. From northern seas came story of the aurora dolphins, creatures that leapt through northern lights, their bodies painting skies with color. Sailors who saw them knew voyage would end in joy, for dolphins carried spirits of children lost to sea, returning to play in heavens. The aurora dolphins myth blended grief and beauty, giving comfort through spectacle, teaching that loss too can glow. Another legend told of the curse of the saltless sea, a body of water said to lie beyond known world, where no salt preserved life, where all ships rotted instantly, where voices echoed but carried no sound. It was place of emptiness, feared as void where meaning dissolved. The myth warned that some discoveries erase, rather than enrich, that not all horizons hold promise. The 15th myth of this last chorus is the ocean's crown of foam, said to rise upon waves only once in millennium, a coronation of sea itself. Whoever beheld it was reminded that no king ruled ocean, no empire could command tide, sovereignty belonged only to water. This myth humbled empires, teaching that conquest ends at shore, that dominion is illusion. Another story speaks of the lantern of abyss, a single flame said to burn beneath trench, glowing eternal, visible only to souls of drowned. They followed it downward, gathering in halls of silence. Some said flame was mercy, others punishment. The lantern of abyss myth confronts mortality, acknowledging that death too has beacon, that even end holds light. There was also the tale of the singing net, a fisherman's tool blessed by goddess, which hummed when cast into water, guiding fish willingly, but when used greedily it fell silent, becoming curse, dragging owners down. The singing net myth reflects balance of need and greed, teaching that tools are moral extensions, their blessing depending on heart that wields them. Another forgotten legend is the blessing of the sleep current, a gentle river beneath ocean that carried weary sailors into dreams. Those who surrendered to it awoke on safe shores, their bodies restored. Yet if resisted, current became undertow, pulling them into abyss. The sleep current myth reveals wisdom about surrender, teaching that rest is survival, that resistance to stillness can destroy. Finally, the last myth gathered in this collection is the ocean's whisper, said to be final sound heard before death. Voice of sea leaning close, telling secret too vast to repeat. Sailors who survived near drowning swore they heard it, words beyond language, leaving them changed. The ocean's whisper myth teaches that sea speaks not in storms alone, but in intimacy, that silence itself is communication, that end is also revelation. Together, these final myths complete circle of forgotten lore. The eternal lighthouse embodies surrender. The ocean's book reflects knowledge beyond possession. The mirror tide teaches self-reflection. The thousand voices wave preserves memory. The golden horizon embodies longing. The stone sailors punish arrogance. The rainbow fathoms warn of beauty too vivid. The ocean's breath guides with longing. The celestial whale unites cosmos and ocean. The last harbor comforts with continuation. The silver anchor symbolizes stability. The ever-hungry reef punishes complacency. The aurora dolphins transform grief into beauty. The saltless sea warns of emptiness. The crown of foam asserts sovereignty of water. The lantern of abyss gives light even in death. The singing net teaches balance. The sleep current honors rest. The ocean's whisper offers revelation. Each myth forgotten has been remembered. Each legend silenced has been spoken. Each echo has returned to shore. And though this collection ends, ocean continues, storyteller without end, voice without silence. To fall asleep with these legends is to float upon eternity, cradled by waves that never cease, reminded that humanity too is myth carried by sea, destined to be remembered not for conquest but for wonder, not for power but for imagination, not for permanence but for stories that drift forever.